Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Sheldon-Feld with the International Grief Institute, and this is Moments of Hope. Tonight, we have author Judy Taylor. Judy lives in Melbourne, Australia, and she was one of those people who was going through life, and life was good, raising her children. And one day in 2011, her mother, Shirley, was dancing on a dance floor when she suddenly collapsed. She died 2 weeks later of a massive stroke. And Judy was just 55 years old. And she's going to tell us about her journey through losing her mom tonight. So welcome to the show, Judy.
Hi, Linda. Lovely to see you.
You as well. And thank you for joining us. You're way across the pond there in beautiful Australia. I had the privilege of meeting you in person this last February and seeing some of the sites with you. And that was such a treat. Melbourne is such a beautiful area. Australia is beautiful, all of it. And it was just a real joy to spend some time with you there. So it's nice to see you again. So thanks for joining me, because I know the time difference is pretty big.
It is pretty big, but when we're on the internet, it doesn't seem to matter. It's like we connect across the oceans. And I
That's
just want
right.
to say, when you were in Australia, that was one of the joys of life. It was so wonderful. It was so
It was
beautiful.
so
It
much
made me
fun.
face. Yeah, I had a ball.
I did too. I did too. Looking forward to the next time.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
so take us back. In 2011, your mom was 78 years old. She was in good health. You were together with family. You were on a dance floor. She was dancing when she suddenly collapsed. What happened?
Yes, well, she was dancing with me. It was just before midnight. My husband was in a band and celebrating his 60th birthday, so we had family and friends there, and we had a dance. We were dancing just before midnight, and she left the dance floor. And the next thing I turned around, and there were people all around her. She'd actually collapsed, and wow.
How scary.
Yeah, it was. Oh, I can almost feel it just talking about it. It was such a shock, so unexpected. I mean, being 78 at that age, everyone can have different health concerns and things. However, she had no major things happening, and it was just totally unexpected. So
Well, you know,
our
that's
life changed forever.
that's why I wanted to have you as my guest tonight, because in life, we often think that certain deaths are part of life. It's a natural
Yeah,
progression of life. Our parents are going to pass before our time. And while that's true, and of course, death has been around since the beginning of mankind, that's true,
yeah,
but we're never ready. And your mom at 78 years old, she was still a young 78. And
oh,
her
definitely.
collapsing right then and there was
Yeah.
unexpected. So it's very traumatic, regardless of age. And one minute you were experiencing joy and celebrating your husband's birthday, and the next minute your life changed. And I think that that's why I wanted to have you on to talk about it, because many people, they grieve over the loss of a parent, even when that parent is what some regard as elderly. And
Yep.
so take us back to that transition time after. You were not prepared. How did you cope?
Well, I wasn't prepared at all. I mean, we went straight from where the band was playing to the hospital, where they told us that she had a bleed on the brain, and if they didn't operate, she would die. And if they did operate, there was no guarantee. So we spent all of the early hours of Sunday morning in at the hospital, waiting while they were operating, and it felt like forever. And when they came out, they said, it's been successful. What we get in the next 24 to 48 hours is the most you can hope for. And so at that point, my husband and I decided, different family members went wherever they went, and my husband and I decided to go home and lie down for a few hours if we could, and then go back in, because they said that there was nothing that could be done at the moment. And it was just exhausted. We'd had a big night, we'd had a big weekend, we had friends from interstate and things. And we got home, and I walked into our bedroom and I just had this feeling. It was so strong. I just had this feeling she was there. I just said, oh my God, she's here. I can feel her everywhere.
Wow.
Ah, and that was a very powerful moment for me. Very,
And,
very powerful.
and
Yeah.
so she didn't actually pass for a couple more weeks, but yet
No.
you felt that she was no longer there, but she was just waiting for you all to come to the realization that she was done.
Yeah. That's, I guess, how I look back on it, how it felt for me. But I wasn't prepared for all the feelings that went with it because, my mum had often spoken to me about different types of spirituality. We'd explored a lot of spiritual things together, including talking about near-death experiences.
Mhm.
She had had a few in her life. I
Is that
personally
right?
haven't had any, but she talked about those. So there was a part of me that felt so comfortable that whatever happened, it was meant to be. That part of our journey is that no one goes before their time.
Right.
However, it's great to have those feelings or to have read about it, talk to other people about it. However, when it's in your face, whoa! So it was a, a major adjustment, I guess I'd say.
Right. It's a transition no matter what, and no matter
Yeah,
what age they are.
yeah,
And so after your mom died, you
yeah,
felt her presence
yeah.
pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah, that moment walking into my bedroom at home was just so powerful. It was like a button being clicked saying, "I'm here," and I'm
Oh my
going, "Oh
goodness.
my God, okay." But it didn't take away from the fact that there she was in the hospital,
Yeah.
lying there on life support and with very little movement. And it's such adjustment for everyone because as I've learnt, and I often write on my Facebook page or in my writing, there's no recipe for grieving and everyone
Right.
grieves in a different way. So I can guess only talk about mine. They said what she gets in the first 24 to 48 hours is the most that you can hope for. And all she really had was, I don't know if you can see her left arm
Okay.
going like this, and that was it. And for me, I just felt, and again, I share these things. These are my experiences. Everyone's experiences are going to be different. But what I found by sharing my story is other people come out and say, oh my God, I've experienced something like that too. So it's
Yeah.
like you talk about sharing your stories actually helps others too. So for me, I actually felt like she'd already left. And
Okay.
when her physical body was there, but for me, I felt like I was coming to terms with that she was dying, or her physical body was there, but she'd left.
Right.
And the day after, I went across the road in the park. I'd been there with her for a while. Everyone went in at different times, had their own space. And I bought myself a cup of tea and a sandwich, and I'm sitting down there, and I just had this feeling. I'm sitting here having a cup of tea with my mum.
My goodness.
So I wrote it down. And I started writing down the experience I was having.
And so is that what inspired your book, your first book, Mom Moments?
Yeah. My
Okay.
first book, Mum Moments Journey Through Grief, was actually me just writing. I had a gorgeous little notepad from a friend of my mum's who had a gorgeous gift and florist shop close by. And I was actually in his shop and I looked around and there was this gorgeous little notepad that had the Eiffel Tower on it. And I turned around and again, it felt like she was there. I
She
was
was
in
meeting
his,
you.
she spent a lot of time there and she had a lot of joy visiting there and chatting to him and things. And when I walked into his shop again, I said, oh my God, she's here. He said, yes, she is. So I started expressing it and other people started saying, yes, we know what you mean. So when I saw that little notepad, with the Eiffel Tower, and I said, oh my God, this is beautiful. I held it like this. It was just, and he said, that's yours. So I actually started writing what was happening for me. I wasn't writing it for anybody else. It was me just, oh, this feels like something. And I started writing, and then I'd start writing something, and words would come through that I wasn't saying, but they were similar things to what I knew about my mum. And I'm going, oh, okay. So
at what point did you decide to publish those writings in a book? That's a big undertaking.
Well, it was quite interesting the way it happened, because I was, as I said, I was writing for me. You know, about 8 weeks after she died, I was sitting in the garden, and it was having a cup of tea with my mum, and I was chatting, and I was like I used to chat to her on the phone. I was chatting to her with my writing, and it was very powerful. And even though she was gone physically, I felt so close to her. However, there were after her funeral, just to go back a bit, here's me who's saying, you know, I'm feeling her, she's with me, everything's okay. I went numb after her funeral, didn't want to know about spirituality, didn't want to know about impermanence, didn't want to know about channeling or connecting with spirit. I was just numb. And about a month after, my husband said, I'll take you out. So we went out somewhere to have lunch, and we didn't have any money. I recognised, except I always have $20 hidden somewhere in my bag. And I said, we can get that, and then we'll go to the bank. We could have gone to a bank right near where we were, and I got this really strong go to the bank in Brunswick Street, Fitzroy. And I thought, okay. Went to the bank in, I know this is diverting a bit, but it's really important to why I shared it. Went to the bank ATM in Fitzroy. I turned around to walk back down the road to my husband, and I got cross the road, Jude. And I stopped. I said, don't want to cross the road. Cross the road, Jude. No one says Jude like my mum said Jude. No one. So I turned around, I crossed the road, and straight across the road was this beautiful healing spiritual centre. I walked in there and I broke down, and I started sobbing uncontrollably. I missed my mum. I expressed all the feelings that were coming out about my mum, my physical mum, not the mum in spirit. And the lady sat with me for nearly an hour. My poor husband was down the road somewhere. I knew he'd be having a coffee, so I didn't worry. And again, I wrote about it. So I kept writing about these things, and then I started reading them to people. And when I read them to people, they could really relate to them. But I had one particular profound one where a friend of mine who had just really disconnected with her mother and really had no intention of keeping her relationship with her mother going in life, I read the uplifting bit from 8 weeks 8 weeks after she died, when I was in the garden chatting to her like I chatted to her on the phone, only through my writing. And then I read a heartbreaking piece when from about 6 months after she died, where I was just like a little girl. I was sobbing uncontrollably. I'd had shocking back pain. It would not go away. I'd had chiropractic, I'd had massage, I'd had physio, you name it. It wouldn't go away. And I sat down on the couch one night after I'd just had more treatment, and I'd had really bad back pain for about a month. All those things normally shifted it. Nothing would. And I said, why can't I get rid of this pain? And I started sobbing uncontrollably, and I just sobbed and sobbed, and then I got my pen out and I was and I was writing everything I was feeling, and and I got to the end of it. I don't care about anything, I just want my mummy. And it was just so powerful. And after I'd finished reading that bit to her, those two very different pieces, the connected spiritually, the totally, I don't care about anything, traumatic 2-year-old child, she actually left me and she said, I'm going to go and visit my mum.
Oh my goodness.
And my husband and I just went, whoa. And he said, you have to put this writing out there. It'll help people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I actually said, leave that one with me. And I continued to write. But, I think it's about, that was late 2011. So in 2013, I started going through my writing, and my wonderful husband helped me. I sort of went through it all, and he really edited it and put it together and said what he felt. And he said it was just so important to get it out there, that it would help people, me sharing my stories, both the positive and the negatives, because the
Right.
beautiful stuff where I feel her, but also that just unbearable pain that is, unless you've experienced it, you don't know it. It's
Right.
almost like it's very difficult for people to understand.
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm glad that you wrote that book because, and bless John for helping you with it, because, when we share our journeys in that way, it helps both reader and writer. The writer, it's cathartic, and for the reader, they go, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy after all. And
Yeah.
that's very powerful and it's very healing.
Yeah.
You said you also contributed to Grief Diaries, Surviving Loss of a Parent. And
Yes, I
in
did.
that, you said that your relationship with your mom now is at times even stronger than it was while she was physically here. What do you mean by that?
Well, in life, mother-daughter relationships can be quite interesting. I was very close to my mum, but we had our highs and lows, and there were times, we really struggled together, and other times we got on really well. And there were times we didn't see each other for a period of time. We were both
Right.
going through our own different things. But I guess a bit like with my writing, what I've really noticed is when you face the dark stuff, when you face the tough stuff, you come out the other side. Whereas if you resist that, it persists. I love that saying, what you resist persists. So I found that if I face my stuff, it passes. So I guess some of the challenges my mum and I had, when we did face them, we found our way through them.
Yeah.
And that
True.
gives a strength. The thing is now, with her not being here physically, because I write to her and I talk to her, and I must admit that in the early days, yes, I felt her presence. Yes, I wrote to her and I sat and I had the cups of tea. Other times I was out walking and I'm saying, is this really you? Am I making this up? So, I had my
Wishful
doubts
thinking.
too. However, I listened. I remember on the 1 year anniversary after her death, about a week before it, I got a really clear message, and I often get them when I wake up, when you're not caught up in the day and things. You need to go away next weekend, and I'm going, oh, I don't know if I want to be by myself next weekend. You need to go away, and I listened to that. And I contacted a friend who had a place down the coast. I love it down the coast. My mum loved it on the beach, and it's one of the places I feel her connection very strongly. And I rang the friend, and the place was available. I said, I'll get back to you. Then I contacted another friend to see if she'd come with me because I didn't really want to go by myself. No one was available. And I contacted the other friend back and said, oh, I don't know if I'll go down. And I kept getting this, you have to go. You need to go. You have to go. You need to go. And about 2 days before, I went, oh, why? And so I packed up and went. And I was nervous and anxious. I had the best weekend.
Really?
It was amazing. I really felt her there. I went to cafes and I felt like I was sharing breakfast with her. I rode my bike and sang the songs we sang. I walked along the beach, and at that point, a few days into the weekend, she said, can I channel through you? Now, I've tapped into a lot of those things, spiritually connecting with higher sources and things over the years, but I've always had a reservation with it too. And I just said, leave that one with me. So I had a wonderful weekend. I wrote about the experiences I had. It was amazing. I kept meeting people. I met a lady who had a little baby who was there while a wedding was happening. And when I was riding my bike, and I just stopped and said hello because it was looking over the cliff tops. And we started to chat, and she said, I'm minding my daughter, my granddaughter, because my daughter is the bridesmaid. And we just started chatting, and she said, oh, why are you down here? And I told her, and she said, oh my God. And I was telling her some of these things we're talking about. She said, I had my baby died at birth. And she said, and she opened up and she started telling me her story, and she'd never told it to anyone.
Oh my
And I'm
goodness.
thinking, I'm supposed to share my story so that other people feel free to open up and share their story. And
Yeah.
I'm getting yes for, these things. And I just know it's my mum. Other people might not know it and not understand it, and that's okay. But for me, I just know. So what I've been able to do, and I'm realizing I sort of sidetracked from your question a bit, was what I've been able to do by trusting that she's there and knowing I can talk to her, and I have conversations with her that
Okay.
sometimes in life were difficult. Now they're not, because we all have issues. We can be triggered. I can be triggered by something you say, or you can be triggered by something I say. It's not your fault I'm triggered. However, how I react depends on whether I'm triggered. So, and in life, my mum and I had those things happen in our life where we could be triggered. But since she's left the physical world, it's different. And the conversations I can have with her. In fact, in one powerful bit of writing at one stage, it became really clear. And for me, that was a gift from her. At different times, I'd attempted as the daughter to express to my mum something. And really, I just needed to express it to process it. However, as I know myself being a mother, is you want to fix it.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
the biggest arguments I think I ever had with my mum was when I might need to talk to her about something that I was struggling with. And really, I recognise now I just needed to process it. But she'd come in with how I could fix it. And that's not what I wanted. And I've
You wanted to
recognised
be
that, which is
heard.
helping me with my own children.
Yeah.
So I've still got this relationship with her where I either talk to her or write to her. And it was very profound for quite a few years after she died. Well, at first there was a lot of doubt, but I also embraced it at the same time. But I've been through a lot of different things in recent years, and she's always there when I need her.
Oh,
But she's always, whilst I say she's always there and I know she's present with me, it's like she's sitting back there. And if I want to connect, I can. I believe they connect in ways you can receive them, and it's different for everyone.
so let me ask you, you have people who are, very open about this sort of thing, but you also have people who are naysayers. They either don't believe in it, it goes against their religion,
Yeah.
or they just are skeptics. And
Yeah.
so when someone reacts in that way, what do you say? Do you try to convince them?
No, I don't actually. I feel like it's really important for people to find their own way through.
Yes.
I like to share my experiences. So I say, in my experience. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. I've got friends who it doesn't connect for. However, they don't turn me away, but it's not long conversations we have about it. But
Sure.
yeah, and I know there'll be people that don't believe in it, but there's many people that do. And, I've connected all over the world with people on Facebook pages who all talk about the signs they receive from their loved ones. Or people who, I had a lady on my Facebook page who said her mother died 30 years ago and she'd never grieved till she found my Facebook page. And I
Oh
know
my
that's the
goodness.
same with your page and your books too.
Yes.
It actually gives people permission to actually explore. So I don't have a perfect answer for the naysayers other than to say, in my experience, it works for me and it really helps me. Being able to talk to my mum through my writing and listen to her whispers. That's what I often say to people. You know, because people say, I miss my mum, I miss my child. Because I have people who have lost husbands, wives, children who relate to what I've written in my book. So whilst it's called Mum Moments Journey Through Grief, it's not just about mothers. It's an
Right.
across the board thing, and you know, being able
It
to say to
transcends
people,
all
"Give it
losses.
a go."
Yeah,
Yeah,
people can find commonality in there throughout. And so,
yeah,
what inspired you then? You then wrote a second book called Heart Space. What
yes.
inspired that?
Heart Space Letters to My Mother is really just a continuation of my writing. However, I guess as that evolved, more connection evolved. And again, it was my husband who said, "This is beautiful. You need to put it out." You know, this is ongoing from what you've written in Mum Moments, but it's also showing how you've grown and how your connection with your mother is growing. And again, I was posting a lot of the things that went in the book. I was posting them on Facebook, and the reactions were just amazing. It was, and most of all, it gave people hope. When I see someone come back and say on Facebook, I don't know how I would have got through the last 12 months with you, or I'm now writing to my mum, and it's such a beautiful connection. I found a way to connect with her. Whereas before they were saying, I wish I could speak to you. I can't hear you. And talking about all the things you feel when someone leaves the physical world. So, giving people something so they can continue their relationship with their loved one,
Yes,
for me,
that's
is
very important because love never dies,
no,
ever.
love never dies.
And it stays with us. And so it's been 7 years since your
Yeah,
mom passed, almost 7.5. How
yeah.
have you changed over time since you've discovered this way to connect with your mom? Healing has taken place. It's also given you an opportunity to reflect on your own self. How have you changed? How has it changed you?
Well, I guess one of the things that's changed is when someone does die, it changes it changes everything, and you know, it changes family relationships.
Yep.
You know, I'm saying it out loud, and have felt a lot of stigma and I guess embarrassment and shame, but it's changed the dynamics in my family of origin, or I guess I'm estranged not by choice, and I find a lot of sadness around there. So i I guess for me, I felt like my mother held the family together. And I've thought a lot about that, in the fact that mothers do tend to do that, and whether family relationships, particularly when there's quite a few in the family, really do hold together uh, because of mothers. And when that changes, everything changes. So I've had to face a lot of things, and I guess I spent a lot of time over the last few years, because I wish it wasn't the way it is, however it is. And I've had to do this wonderful thing people talk about, saying letting go. Well, I tell you what, even if you know things aren't working, letting go is not easy. Well, not in
Yeah.
my world anyway. So I've done
It's
a lot
hard
of
work.
yeah, it's a
Very hard
lot of
work.
hard work. So I've done a lot of inner child work and a lot of understanding. Whilst I'm not happy with the way that is, I have a lot more compassion and understanding. But more importantly, I went deep into myself to discover who I am, what experiences I had in my childhood, through my teen years, through my early adulthood, and how they have motivated a lot of the choices I've made in my life. And I've actually made a lot of changes from being, I guess, very much. I feel like I've spent most of my life being misfix it. I've got to fix everything. So I've had to acknowledge that in my desire to make things right, which is not going with the flow, which I do my best to practice, I've wanted to fix things all along the way. And I've had to let go of that. And it hasn't been easy. And I'm still learning and growing. And it's brought up childhood stuff that I guess, well, we all know about the Me Too campaign around the world. Well, I was sexually abused when I was a child, and no one in my immediate family then, my mum or dad or siblings, knew about it. But with all the processing I've done over the last few years, it's almost like my mother, through leaving and me communicating with her, has given me the gift to go to a deeper level of understanding me, of getting to know myself and making choices that are best for me. And
So
I tell you what, it hasn't been easy, but again, my writing is so powerful. I've spoken to organisations that are very associated with sexual abuse, and I'm not ready yet, but what I've written over the last few years, what I've read to them is so powerful. And they've said, you know, when you're willing, if you're willing to put it out there, it will help so many people, because I own it. I write from the heart and I write what I feel. And the sort of things I've written, they said, oh, that's what people feel, but they can't talk about. But you
yes,
can express it. So I'm
you have
using
a
a
way
gift.
with words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And so how has it's been 7.5 years, how has your grief changed? You know, when you first lost your mom, you weren't
yeah,
sure
yeah.
if you would ever recover, for lack of a better word, that you would
Oh,
ever find your footing. So how has your grief changed over
yeah.
time?
Well, the word I wrote, and it's in my book, is don't think I'll ever get over this. I have to say, for me, I don't know if get over it is a word. I've moved through it. I've found my own comfort. The fact that I connect with her and talk to her, and I feel like I've built a different kind of relationship with her, has dramatically reduced the grief for me. However, it opened up the Pandora's box of the grief around the separation in family and the sexual abuse that I never spoke about when I was a 9-year-old, and now I'm processing. So I guess my grief journey, I've recognised that throughout our life we grieve for different things. Even when we're a child, little
Right.
things happen and they trigger a response in us. And we can quite often put up a wall or a barrier, like Miss Fix It. If I'm a good little girl, everything will be all right, or whatever it is we do to stop us feeling that grief. But we can build up so many walls to stop us from experience the feelings that we think are not okay.
Right.
Whereas I've learnt to embrace, and the interesting thing is I did a diploma of holistic healing back in the 1990s,
Mhm.
and I believe all this stuff about going with the flow and embracing your light and dark side. However, I thought I'd done a lot of that, but after Mum died, I realised there was a whole new level, like peeling an onion. So what I've actually learnt to do is embrace all those things, and it's it's challenging, but I'd have to say it's so worth it,
Well, and
because you
you've
actually get to
impacted
know
many, many
yourself. You get
lives.
to love yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you've impacted many, many lives because of it. You know, when we lose someone we love, when we experience that first degree relative loss, a profound loss,
yeah,
especially when it's traumatic, it
yeah,
forces us into this rebuilding of self. And
yeah,
just like you said, you have to find your inner compass, and that takes time. And sometimes you
yeah,
also have to fight for it and be willing to give into the journey.
yeah,
And so you've done all that. And by sharing your writing with the world, you have helped countless other people find their
yeah,
own inner compass as well. So thank you for doing that. And so,
yeah.
what words of advice would you give to our viewers who have just lost their mom, or they're going to lose their mom soon? What words of advice do you have for them? And again, this is, many people think of, oh, well, they're elderly or this or that. But that love connection, that connection between mother, child is
Yeah.
something that is so powerful. And so when we do lose them, there's just no preparation for the emotions that flood our heart. And so what would you like to say to the viewers who are going through that now?
Whoa, there's so many things I'd like to say. First of all, be gentle on yourself.
Mm,
There's no right or wrong. There is no recipe for grieving. And one of the most important things is to actually acknowledge it, to actually
yeah,
allow yourself to experience all your feelings, because you don't know. They come up out of the blue. You can be, you feel deep sadness, but at the same time, for me, like for instance, I still felt her presence. So there's a lot of confusion going on. But really, I guess, be gentle, find things that help you. For me, meditating helps me. For writing in a journal really helps me, and I express it. I guess the thing in writing is there is no judgment. When you say something to someone, the majority of the time people respond from what their perception is of what you're
right.
saying. So therefore, you can say, I'm really missing my mum, and someone might say, she's been gone 7.5 years at the moment. Whereas if you write down, or for me, if I write down, I'm really missing my mum, the next words come. So that's what I talk about when I talk about we're all natural channels, even if we don't realize it. Often, if you ask someone a question, the other person's got the answer
All right.
before you finish the question. So
Right.
when you write, you're actually writing what you're feeling. So you can write, I don't care about spirituality. I don't care about anything. And you just keep writing till you're finished. So you purge what you're feeling. What happens to when I purge what I'm feeling? If I wake up and think, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, I will write the words, I don't know what to do with my life. And the next words come. And whether I write a page or 10 pages, I know when I've processed, because all of a sudden I start noticing, oh, I'm breathing calmly.
Yeah.
Oh, so by actually embracing your feelings, whether you sit with them or write through them, allowing yourself to cry, you know, when I sobbed my heart out, that time when I had the bad back, by the time I'd sobbed my heart out and written about the pain I was feeling at the loss of my mum, my back pain was gone. And
Oh
I'm
my
going,
goodness.
oh my God. So when we actually tune in, listen to what is happening to us, we give ourselves an opportunity to move through each stage. And there isn't any perfect answer. And some days you may just feel like sitting in bed.
Yep.
Sit in bed and have a cup of tea. I didn't pick up a book for probably 6 months, maybe longer, and I love reading. I'd just sit in bed, I'd light a candle. Some nights I could feel my mum, some I couldn't, because I think I was blocking it
Mm,
because of the pain. A lot of people go to psychic mediums and say they've had wonderful experiences with them. I've because I guess I'm doing my own. I'm doing that connection that some people do by going to a psychic medium. I'm doing it by writing to my mum, talking to her, and even the times when I say, I don't know that this is real. Are you real? Is this really happening? It's still me opening up to the communication.
right.
So
Right.
yeah,
You're tapping into the emotions and the love and,
yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight and sharing your heart with our viewers.
Yeah,
I think it's so important for people to understand that, no matter how long someone has lived, when they pass, it causes a flood of emotions. And that can really pull the rug out from underneath us.
yeah.
And so I applaud your courage for sharing so, readily what your journey was like. Your mom was 78 years old, and,
Going on 50.
in our mind, that she still, had another 10, 15 years ahead of her.
Yeah,
And and so again, people will say they lived such a long life, but you know what? It wasn't long enough. So,
Yeah.
thank you for validating all those people who share your journey and your viewpoint. And no matter what age someone is, we still aren't prepared for them to die because we love them. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me. How can viewers contact you?
Oh, I've got a website and a Facebook page where I chat to people often, and really most days. There's times I think, how can I keep this up? But I'm managing to do it. I can
Well,
give you the links, or
where can they find you on Facebook?
Facebook is Judy Taylor, Grief, Healing, Love, Inspiration, and Hope.
Beautiful. And what about your website?
My website is positive, POSITIVE, signs. Whoa, almost forgotten it. I don't use it. www.positivesigns.com.au.
Okay, wonderful.
And I've got a Twitter as well. I'm not very. I am actually much better. I'm really good at the internet now. I really didn't know much about it till I opened up my Facebook page. I'm getting better at it, and I'm learning all the time. I do have a Twitter account. So, sorry?
The internet keeps growing and social media keeps growing. So just when we think we've learned one platform, another one pops up. So you're doing great. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Judy. I really appreciate it. Much love to you across the pond.
Yeah, and I love to say across the ocean. So sending you love and hugs across the ocean, and it's lovely to talk to you. And thank you for everything you're doing, Linda.
Oh, thank you, Judy.
So many people around the world.
You as well. It's an honor to work alongside you and to know you, and much love to you.
Yeah, much love to you too.
You have a good night.
Bye.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.